This video is sponsored by my brain cell.
The third step of contour is measuring height and width in proportion. It's better measuring from the biggest object. You need to keep the longer length and change the shorter length to match the real proportion. If the height is longer than the width, then keep the length of the height to measure the length of the width. If the width is longer than the height, then keep the length of the width to measure the length of the height. If the height and width of the object is similar, you can decide which length to keep and to measure the other one. For example, in this picture, the biggest object is a cup, so in your drawing, you need to maintain the length of the height to measure the length of the width. In this picture, the biggest object is a plate, so you need to keep the length of the width to measure the length of the height. In this picture, the biggest object is a pomelo, and since its height and width are similar, in this case, you can decide which length to keep and to measure the other one. Back to our drawing. In this picture, the bottle is the biggest object, and its height is longer than the width, so we need to keep the length of the height to measure its width. When you do the measurement, first thing you need to do is knowing the proportion in the picture. We use this tool to measure the bottle. If you double the length of the width, it will be a little longer than the height. And then go back to our drawing. We keep the length of the height at a few centimeters to the height, then divide that number by 2 to get the width. The proportions should be similar, but don't have to be exact. If you prefer to draw very precise outline, I would recommend you to use grid. But if you want to train your observational ability, it would be better to practice the method shown in the video. After finishing the biggest object, it would be better to measure the second biggest object. The second biggest object is this apple. Its width is slightly smaller than the width of this bottle in the picture. So we can use the width of the bottle to get the width of this apple in our drawing. And the height of this apple is smaller than its width in the picture. We can use the length of the width to get length of the height in our work. When you measure the height and the width, it's better to compare similar length or to find some length is half the size. This will be easier for measuring the proportion. In this condition, when we do the measurement of this egg, we can compare its width to the width of this apple, or the height of this bottle. But I find out the close length is the height of this apple, so I use the height of the apple to get the width of the egg. Then I try to figure out which length is similar to the height of this egg in the picture. And I'm going to use that length in my drawing to get the height of egg. Next is this lemon. I feel the size is similar to this egg, so I use its length to get the height and the width of this lemon. And use same idea to get the size of kumquat. After measuring height and width in proportion, you need to check the size and position again. If you draw to left or to right, you can change it right now. In my picture, I find out the bottle is to left. I need to move it to the right. And I also move the egg slightly to left. You can also move the objects up and down, even you already measured its bottom. Besides, if you feel your objects are too big or too small in your work, you need to go back to the first step of contour to draw the guideline again, and go through second and third step again. This is a very important part. A lot of beginners skip this. They did not check it and go to next step too quickly. When they finish the accurate contour and realize the composition is not good, they also don't want to correct it, because people feel they already took so many times and energy to draw it. They don't want to do it all over again. It's too painful. Even they know the composition is not good. So I highly recommend you to do it very carefully in the first 3 steps, so that you can have a good composition and proportion. A good composition and proportion are very important in the painting or drawing. If you can master first 3 steps of contour, I guarantee that your drawing skills will improve a lot, because well begun is half done. If you want to learn more knowledge of measurement, you can check my previous episode, Best Measurement Tips. I will put the link in comment below.